Assalamu alaikum students. Uh, I hope you are doing well. So today I'm going to give a lecture on the preparing and delivering an effective presentation. And the subject is technical and business writing. I'm lecture number 11 and my name is Muhammad Usman Ali. Um Engineering you're speaking. Uh, Engineers are often called on to speak formally, and many engineers find they have to speak a lot. Whether you give an important 5-minute briefing or a professional 1 hour presentation at a technical seminar, you should see your talk as a great opportunity to share information and to show that you know how to communicate. Few of us are naturally gifted with such capabilities, and some of us are almost um, petrified at, at the thought of talking before a group. But the skills possessed by good speakers can be learned. The principle discussed in the principle uh, discussed in this slide will be enable you to become a confident speaker. People will listen to because you transfer information efficiently and effectively, that is within a minimum of noise. So there are two parts of this. One is the preparing the presentation. How do you prepare your presentation? And the second thing is delivering the presentation. So let's start with the preparing the presentation. Preparing the presentation consists of these following points. And what are these points? Uh, number one is analyze your audience. Number two is decide on your primary purpose. Number three is determine your time frame. Number four is identify your key points. Choose an organizational plan. Prepare an outline and notes. Create supporting graphics. A word of caution. Make your information accessible. Prepare your introduction. Prepare your conclusion. Get ready for questions. And last, practice, practice, practice. Uh, let's discuss analyze your audience. To make sure you don't do the same thing to others, ask yourself the questions listed in slide when beginning to prepare your talk, and make sure you have a clear an idea of the answers as possible. So these are the questions. Let me read it for you. Who will the key individuals in my audience be? What needs or concerns do they have regarding my topic? What are my objectives for this talk? How knowledgeable are my listeners about my subject? How can I get their attention and interest right away and keep it? What are their attitudes likely to be regarding what I have to say? Do I need to work on changing their attitude? And if so, what is the best way to do about it? What benefits are they going to get from listening to me? What kinds of questions are they likely to ask? What kind of feedback do I want? So these are the few points. Okay. Second one is the decide your primary purpose. Your purpose in talking is intimately related to the makeup of your listeners and the reason they are sitting in front of you. They there for instruction, information, insight, to be persuaded, or what? What action or change do you feel they need to undertake? Knowing exactly what kind of assignment you have will also determine your foremost purpose. Engineering presentations, uh, uh, engineering presentations can take many forms, indicates each with a specific purpose and organizational requirement. Make sure you know what you are getting into, what is expected of you, who your audience is going to be, and what you want to accomplish by talking to them. Decide exactly what you want your listener to take away from your talk. Then you will be on solid ground while preparing the remaining feature of your presentation. So here is an image. So you can see that recommendation report, product information, tutorials, status or progress report, technical proposals, sales information, technical seminars, papers, and project results reports. So next one is determine your time frame. It has been said that no speech is ever too long for the speaker or too short for the listener. The cardinal rules here is never to speak longer than you are supposed to avoid annoying busy people or offending speakers who come after you. Check how much time you have been allotted. Knowing your time limit will also help you decide how much details you can go into, how much time you should allow for question or discussion, and how much time you can spend on an introduction and conclusion or recommendations if you have some. So here's a figure illustrates how deeply you go into different aspects of typical engineering topics and related to how much time you have to speak. The tops of the pyramid in the figure represent the least you could say on a topic, perhaps a single sentence, while the uh, while the true base of the pyramid represents uh, everything that could possibly be said. This is perhaps why we almost always impose time limits on speakers, otherwise they might go on forever. It's been claimed that any subject can be covered in virtually any amount of time. The speaker could compress the creation of the universe into 3 or 4 sentences or fewer, if necessary. In the same way, an expert could talk for hours, probably to a rather small audience, on the mating habits of the Gambian giant, uh, pouched rat. Whatever you do, don't decide that since you have a lot to say in short time. You should speak as fast as possible while rapidly clicking slides on the screen. You will just as rapidly lose your listener. Identify your key points. As indicated above, oral presentation normally don't permit us to give all the minuscule detail about every aspect of our topic. So don't expect to say everything that could possibly be said on your subject with a sharp awareness of your main purpose. And time frame decide what the most important points are that you want to get across to your audience and how you want to develop those points in the time you have got. You may need to be quiet, mathematical about this. If you have 20 minutes to make four important points, you may subtract the time you want from an introduction and conclusions, and divided what is left by four, thus leaving from three or 4 minutes for each point. In some presentations, you may not want to give equal time to each point. For instance, if you have to discuss 5 reasons why a project should be cancelled or why your company should invest in new equipment, you might determine which points will meet the most resistance from your audience. Then aim to spend more time explaining those points while giving briefer treatment to the less controversial ones. So this is about the identify your key points. So let's discuss the choosing organizational plan. Your subject and purpose, and to some extent, the time you have will help determine how to organize your material. Most presentations can roughly be broken down into an introduction, the main point, a conclusion, and question and the answer period. So here is a table. It it list of it is a list of ways to organize your central material. Some presentations will call for combining some of these organization plans. So I think table is on the next slide. So okay, let me explain this one. This is the time sequence. Describe progress on a project or steps in a procedure. Relate decisions leading up to an action or occurrence that led to a problem. Uh, then is spatial sequence. Describe equipment or a physical area such as a test site or, or plant facilities. Outline a physical process. Decreasing importance. Give you most important point first down to the least important. Relating 6 ways to improve or prevent a situation. Increasing importance. Work up to your most important point. Some minor reasons for an action change or decision followed by the major reasons. General to specific. Present a general point followed by a specific example. We have we have got to improve production followed by concrete ways to do some ways to do so. Sorry, specific to general. Be persuasive, citing examples of personal injury to lead to the point that more stringent safety regulations are needed at your plant. Uh, Comparative, compare and contrast equipment, approaches or ideas on such aspects as cost, durability, reliability, reliability, ease of operations. Familiarity, begin with the familiar first, leading your audience into as an understanding of the unfair, taking about corporate needs or problems. Difficulty, present data in order of the easiest first and progressing to the hardest as in a training session or a tutorial, and so on. So let's move to the next slide. Prepare an outline and notes. Uh, Writing an outline and notes helps you clarify in your own mind how best to present your material. They also give you a means of deciding how much time to allot to each point, and they will be helpful when you rehearse the presentation. However, extensively relying on an outline or notes during the actual presentation can be dangerous. because you will give the impression that you don't know your topic thoroughly. Your notes and outlines may range from a few hastily scribbled ideas, if that much, jotted down a few moments before an unexpected briefing, to a complete manuscript of every word you intend to say. Reading a word for word written version of your talk in front of an actual audience is not a good idea. However, unless you feel very insecure or are giving a highly technical conference paper calling for extreme precision and accuracy, even then, few people want to sit while a paper is read to them. After all, they could read it themselves in the comfort of their own homes or offices. While preparing your presentation, determine which prompts will be keep you on track when giving it. The main cues engineering tend to use are the following. One, uh, an outline of complete talk with the key ideas highlighted or in large print to be quickly glanced at if necessary as presentation goes along. Note cards. Note cards numbered in the order they will be used with key ideas and facts clearly written on them. If these are relied on too much, however, you will appear unsure of your material. Visual aids, such as transparencies or slides, if you are really on top of your topic. Your visuals themselves will be all you need to keep on track. They may in fact be the outline of your talk. If you wish, you can make printed copies of them for your own use with notes written to yourself that can be quickly referred to if needed. A backup plan. In case something goes wrong with the equipment you are using. If you have attended many meetings or seminars, you know this still can happen. So, you may want to have some hard copies of your overhead to hand out in case of system failure. So these are the few points on prepare and outline and notes. And this is the one example of this is the one example of outline. But like for example, feature needs: A is the sharper image, B is the cheaper cyclotrons, number three is the safety, and so on. This is the one example of outline. Okay. um, Create supporting graphics. Since we live in increasingly visual age, and since people remember information better when they both hear it and see it, most effective engineering speakers support their talk with illustrations of some kind. Graphics are also work to your advantage since preparing them force you to organize and rehearse your rehearse your presentation and possibly discover weak spots that need attention. Showing them will save you time during the presentation since you won't have to write the information down on a board of flip chart. They can also serve as cues for you, reminding you of what you want to cover and the order in which you want to cover it. You should at a minimum plan to use visuals wherever you feel they will simplify a point. clarify a point, stress a point, show critical relationship between ideas or facts. So here comes a channel for graphic support for engineers. One of the most common means of showing graphic has traditionally been the overhead projector with transparencies that you prepare in advance. Transparencies have the advantage of letting you add information on them with a wax marker while showing them or even using additional ones as overlays. If you have several transparencies, remember they can be slippery, but this is all about the transparencies. But also there is one option for the slides, so you can also use the slides, and it's embarrassing to see them slides off the table and crossing the floor, so you might want to consider netting of some sort of each one. So and the next one is designing your graphic. Any good graphic program will give you everything you need to create graphics: pie chart, bar charts, flow charts, and any other examples. Nowadays, what only a few hours training and engineering can produce almost any kind of graphic with programs like PowerPoint. Some specialized programs allow you to create excellent illustrations of equations, electrical circuits, and the other uh, technical data. With the growing use of scanners, you can now copy and present professional illustrations or photographs of just about anything if you show scanned material in your presentation. Be aware of any copyright restriction that may apply and give credit. Usually at the bottom of your slide in small print to the skewer of any such material. A word of caution. All the presentation software, especially PowerPoint, is widely used practically everywhere nowadays and can produce stunning graphics. It is not universally admired or thought to be the solution to every presentation task. Professional communication experts often warn of the dangers of visually presenting information as no more than a series of bulleted points that oversimplify or dumb down our material. Other critics warn of incompatible color combinations being used or for clever artwork on the screen that overwhelms the subject. These possible negatives are constantly debated and analyzed, and if you want to become familiar with them, enter drawbacks of PowerPoint or uh, dangers of PowerPoint or some similar phrase in your search engine. Make your information accessible. As we implied earlier, the most dazzling transparencies or slides will impress no one if the information is contained is not easily accessible. In fact, um, anything you put on the screen that cannot readily be grasped but by your audience because it's either too complex or too small is worthless. This point is critically worth hearing if only because we see is often is it so often ignored by engineering speakers. Too complex. Don't let your visuals suffer from information overload. Each should be as simple as possible. Portraying the bare fact, you can always elaborate verbally. Even quite technical material can be reduced to manageable concepts on the screen. For example, something as complex as an electronic circuit can be broken up into uh, further part and you can simplify it. The second one is too small. If your visual consists of list or other written information, make the word easy to read. Use the means using a least 24 points font size, preferably bold face. It's best to have no more than 8 lines of print on a slide or transparencies, and better not to use all the capital letters since they make for harder read. A page of text or an illustration photocopied from a book or journal really make a good overhead. Make your presentation written information on the screen. Don't crowd it. Provide simple sample margin and plenty of white spaces between and around the line. You might want to use bullets, check or other marks to emphasize points, but resist the temptations to go overboard with the variety of fonts and clip art now available. Don't let your artwork overwhelm the information on the screen. So let's move towards the prepare your introduction. When you're talking of how to begin your talk, remember that your audience may be asking themselves, at least subconsciously, why do I need to hear this, or why should I be here right now? Number two, your audience has a limited attention span. To help solve both problems, design your introduction to let your audience know right away what your topic is and of what benefit it is to them. In a sense, tell them why they should listen to you, then provide a sense of direction by giving an overview of where you are going in the presentation and what you plan to cover. Let your audience know how long you intend to speak. If it's not already known, many speakers lose their audience right away because they fail to follow these procedures at the outset of their presentation. So next one is the prepare your conclusion. Design the end of your presentation to focus the audience attention solely on essentials. Depending on the type of presentation you will be able to reinforce your message by the example. Summarize what you have discussed, stressing your central idea once more, reviewing your key points, restating your recommendations or decisions. An appropriate final summing up slide can be a great help here. Above all, give your audience a lasting impression of what you want them to take away from your talk, such as the feeling that you have solved the problem or concern or have provided new insights. Don't suddenly stop talking at the point. However, make note to close gracefully with something like, and this concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Are there any questions? Something like that. So this is all about prepare your conclusion. So let's discuss the get ready for the questions. Definitely when you will explain something, so always keep in mind question will also come. So is there going to be question period after your talk? Spend some time during the preparation stage. to anticipate and get ready for them. Put yourself in the place of your listeners. Are they likely to find any part of your talk especially difficult, detailed, or uh, controversial? Are they likely to hold any opposing viewpoints? Are there areas you may not be able to go into as thoroughly as you would like due to time restraints? And which might therefore generate questions. What could be the worst question asked? Also, can you think of diplomatic ways to encourage questions from the people who are reluctant to ask? Sometimes a friendly smile or I would love to have some question is all that needed. When questions come, it's often a good idea to repeat them aloud in some forms before answering. The repetition is useful for people who didn't hear the question clearly in the first place, and the delay might give you time to gather your thoughts. So here comes the practice, practice, and practice. Keep in mind these letters. Uh, Plentiful practice prevents plentiful poor. So these one, two, three, four, five, these five P's. So always remember these five P's. Poor presentation, six P's. Let me repeat it for you. Plentiful practice prevents painfully poor presentations. Some speakers go over their material, outline notes, visual, up to 7 times before presenting it. For others, this would be overkill. Most speakers do rehearse at least twice. However, if their talk is of any significance or if they feel unsure of their material, depending on the importance of your talk, you may decide to have at least one dress rehearsal if you can, preferably in the room where you will be presenting. This will let you get familiar with the room and any equipment to be used. And audio or videotape or of an audio or videotape of this rehearsal, if possible, would enable you to self uh, critique your performance. On the other hand, you might want to find a trial audience to listen to your first run and give you some feedback. Friends, colleagues, a spouse, or even yourself in the bathroom mirror can be good audience to participate on. So this is very important point. Because facing yourself, if you can face yourself, then you can face anyone. Perhaps the most valuable outcome of careful practice is the self-confidence you gain. One antidote to nervousness about speaking in front of a group is to be able to walk into that room knowing you are completely in control of your subject and ready to present it in an effective manner. Confidence you can only gain by first practicing as much as possible. So let's discuss the delivering the presentation. All due presentation efforts are aimed at one goal: to give an effective noise-free presentation that will produce the desired result. By the time you stand in front of your audience, you should have fixed many of the potential glitches that can surface in oral presentation. Knowing your subject and audience makeup will have helped you determine the information you need and how you need to communicate it. Most engineers can prepare a presentation well enough given a little awareness, analysis, and preparation time, yet the sad fact remains that plenty of uh, lackluster and somewhat boring presentations occur every day in business and industry. As with a written report, such presentations can be greatly improved by the elimination of noise. So, avoiding noise in engineering presentations. In an oral presentation, noise can be uh, defined as anything that prevents the message from effectively getting into minds of the audience. Following are some causes of noise that frequently occur in engineering presentation and even in other presentations. Number one is the speaking too softly. Avoid the tendency to speak too softly. Try to project your voice relative to the room and audience size. If some listeners can hear you, you are wasting their time. If some listeners, sorry, cannot hear you, you are some listeners are hearing you and some listeners cannot hear you. So it means that you are wasting your time. Speaking too slowly or rapidly. Avoid a slow, labored pace with too many pauses. Also avoid speaking too rapidly. Aim for a speed slightly slower than normal conversation. Remember that pausing and deliberately slowing down once in a while can help you stress important points. Number three, speaking monotonously. Ever heard the joke about the uh, dull college professor who dreamed he was giving a lecture only to wake up and find he was? How you talk often makes a bigger impression than flashy visuals and what you say combined. You could be explaining the never before reveal, revealed secrets of time. Travel and yet find few paying attention if you sound bored to death. Hyponic monotony can be avoided by varying your pace and your pitch by speaking the way most people do it, lively and energetic conversation. Enthusiasm only your part will encourage your audience to listen to you. Number four is the using verbal filters when speakers need to pause or is uncertain of what to say next, irritating and empty catchwords, or perhaps like basically and uh, uh, no sometimes take over. Don't distract your audience with a high like gap, high UPM like ohms per minute. Like sometimes you give some gap like oh okay I guess so something you give some gaps uh, in your speech. So this is UPM ohms per minute. Like try to avoid this kind of noise in your presentation. There is nothing wrong with being silent for a few minutes while gathering your thoughts. Number five is becoming a statue, pendulum, or traveler. Avoid the tendency to freeze up physically when in front of a group. Also, avoid the tendency to sway back and forth without moving your feet, as well as frantic uh, passing and hand movement. Both are distracting and do not add live lines to the presentation. Try for a natural stance and movement when in front of your listeners, with some foot movement but not enough to wear out your audience as they follow you back and forth across the room. Number six is blocking the screen. Avoid standing directly in front of screen and staying here throughout the talk. It's just as bad to stand partially off to the side yet still block the screen for those sitting at the side. If you can't avoid blocking the screen, Move around enough during your presentation so that you don't block anyone's view continuously. Reading from the screen or from notes, keep to a minimum any reading of your slides or notes during a presentation. Straight reading can easily become monotonous. Also, be wary of dimming the lights to make your visuals easier to read. Low lights can make people drowsy and can hide facial expressions and the eye contact you need to have with your listeners. Additionally, reading from notes or frequently referring to them will straight away give your audience the impression that you don't know your subject as well as you should. Uh, and this is the last one, the strengthen your presentation. Use an informal style when making an engineering presentation. You are not delivering a sermon usually or uh, pronouncing on profound legal intricacy. Generally, the best style is an informal one, paralleling as closely as possible the normal conversational made of everyday life. It's quite all right to use constructions. It's don't couldn't etc. Um, Even if you avoid them in formal writing, using pronouns such as you, your, I, and we will help you relate to your audience. Uh, Interest and need and will indicate you are interested in them as possible, sorry, as people rather than as an impersonal mass. Avoid any technical jargon not readily understood by your listener. So here are the point that are on the slide. Make clear transitions. Even if you have a well organized talk full of important details, be sure to show the connections between your ideas. Your visuals will assist you, of course, but make your presentation as user friendly as possible. Keep your listeners in the picture by emphasizing connections and transition in your thinking by using simple words and phrases like these. First, on the other hand, next, to begin with, initially, further, and so on. These are the only slides you can read off by yourself. Repeat key points. No matter how brief the presentation, you are going to have at least one main point you want your audience to go away with. Don't be afraid to repeat yourself. Your listeners need to know the most important aspect of your subject. There is a lot to be said for that old piece of advice. Tell your listeners what you are going to tell them, then tell them, and finally tell them what you have told them. It's essential to repeat your key points in a concluding summary. Use a pointer. A pointer is the best way to focus your audience attention on your key point while you explain that they are looking at avoid laser pens because they are distracting, easily misused, and potentially harmful to people's lives. Maintain eye contact. Uh, you increase your credibility a great deal by looking at your audience as you talk while avoiding eye contact could give the impression that you are shifty or unprepared. Looking at your audience helps establish rapport with each member in a small group and creates a sense of intimacy with a larger group. As you progress in your talk, try to hold visual contact with each person for a few seconds and move on to someone else. Looking at the individuals also enable you to pick up feedback on how they are receiving your message. Puzzled, puzzled looks or frantic note taking, for example, might show that you need to go back over something or slow down. So, this was all about today's lecture. So, here I have explained how to prepare a lecture and how to deliver a lecture. So, hopefully, you have got the all points how to prepare and deliver presentations. So please watch it carefully. If you have any questions and queries, please note it down, and you may ask it in the comments, and also you can ask me live in the classroom. Thank you very much for watching my lecture. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.